Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Oh, we have someone driving.
Oh, wait. Who's Martha?
Be
It's
careful.
Martha. You're driving. Wait, are you driving? I hope not.
She's muted right now.
She is. Oh,
Yeah.
she's listening. She's going to listen.
Yeah.
Okay, that works. That works.
We
So
can't,
who
we
do we
can't.
have? We've got Jeannie. We've got Katie. Lauren. Pam. Hannah. We have Kristen. We have Terry. Clarissa. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us, especially because this was kind of a last minute
Yeah, it was.
thing for us to do. We have, let me see if I'm saying this name right, Elitsa. Okay, I think she said yes. Let me open this chat box. Okay, nice hat, you guys. Okay, thanks. I didn't want to do my hair today. The funny thing is, this is a sun hat and it's raining outside, so it doesn't even, match the scene very well. But we have Ronald, Alice. Hi, Alice. We have Zach, Edmund, Rachel. Thanks, you
We got
guys.
a lot of people joining us last
It's
minute.
great.
I like it.
Really, really nice to see everybody on here. Sherry, if you guys want to turn your cameras on, you can. You don't have to, though. You definitely don't have to, but if you want to turn your videos on so we can see you. Okay, so I guess, should we start chatting a little, Evan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, thank you everyone for joining us. I know this was a little bit last minute, but Amy and I got to talking after the last discussion last week, and both of us, it was important. And I know Amy was getting a lot of feedback and talking with you guys, and we wanted to provide space and an opportunity for to hear directly from you guys. And in some cases, I know we have a couple people that are willing to share their own story and their own experience with the curriculum, which means everything to us, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to create these safe spaces for us to be on our own individual journey of growth. And it is a safe space for you to do that, but also support and connect and learn from other people while you're doing it. So hopefully we were able to provide that experience for everyone tonight. And again, we'd love to hear some of your experiences. But first, maybe Amy, you can kind of share a little bit about your experience and some of the things that you've heard.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say thank you, Evan, and the High Tide team for all the work that you guys have done. You really have done an incredible job. In fact, my mom and I feel like after each day, after we go through the curriculum each day, my mom and I have a conversation, and we're either just like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? Like, we're learning so much information, and really, you guys have put really quality information together for us. When you go online, it's like you see so much information coming from so many different sides, and some of it's fake news and some of it's memes and some of it's like you don't even know if it's true, and it's just like information overload. So what I feel like with this workshop was really beneficial was just quality information in one spot, very easy for us to watch and learn from and also reflect on. And I often feel like I forget things if I don't write them down. So I think it's just wonderful the way that you have us reflecting on everything. And I've heard from so many of you guys as well, and your experience. A lot of you have reached out to me on Instagram and just kind of shared an experience you've had through this. So I feel like last week, I've loved our conversations with Dr. Joseph, and I've just wanted to, and he's amazing, by the way. I mean, I'm so grateful. I feel like he couldn't have been a better fit for this. He's so knowledgeable. This is where his heart's at, and he's so passionate. And so, anyways, and I should tell you a funny story. My connection to Dr. Joseph came through, his fiance is my husband's ex-girlfriend's from high school sister. So my husband's like, my ex-girlfriend from high school? Well, her brother-in-law is this like unbelievable author, professor, and it was just a wonderful connection for us. So it's kind of funny, talking about ex-girlfriends. But so anyways, but he was just so brilliant, and I want to do more more work with him in the future. And anyway, so I felt like after last week, we just didn't really get an opportunity to really see all of you guys. And I wanted to make sure that you guys had an opportunity to speak if you wanted to before this workshop is over. So we did select 2 people right off the bat to bring on, just because they mentioned that they'd be interested in sharing, you know, their thoughts or anything they've learned, or any like aha moments throughout this. And so we'll start there. Also, if you guys want to come live, if you don't want to come live, that's okay. You can ask questions in the chat box. But if you want to come live, let us know in the chat box that you do. And, you know, if you have a question, or if you want to just kind of share your experience, or if there was any moment throughout this workshop that really triggered something in you, or that was an aha moment, or that really touched you, or that you think will stick with you, and you want to share that, that would be great as well. So we just wanted to open the floor to you guys to be able to share and chat. So Evan, do you want to bring?
Yeah, so who's the first person that we have here?
So I have Clarissa here, who I can see.
Okay,
are you ready?
I just unmuted her. Let's see.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
we can. Hi,
oh
Clarissa.
my gosh. Oh, I don't want to be big. Hi, I just put me back in my little box. Hi, everybody. This is wonderful. I love seeing everyone's faces. And thank you so much. It's been amazing. And really, you know, I was definitely one of the ones that came in like, I'm from New York. I was in the music business. All of my friends are, you know, Black. I've been around it. Like, I get it. And, you know, it was so humbling to just realize how, in a way, how ignorant that is in itself, and just to listen. And I think that's been a frustrating thing for me too, with some of my friends that are really on one side strong, sort of acquaintances. And I remember just this really strong feeling of just listen, because when we can find compassion and empathy to just stop and go, you know what, I really don't know what someone else is going through. And when I can try to put myself in their shoes and try to understand, at least that can give me a bit of that, you know, empathic feeling to try to understand where they're coming from. Because I have friends who are married to police officers, kind of thing. So they're really on the other side. And I just want to say, okay, I am not married to a police officer. I don't know what that might be like.
Oh, there we go.
So I feel kind of in the middle, you know, of what's going on with this. But
shoot. Hey, Clarissa.
Very clear. Yeah, sorry. Do stop me, because I'll go on and on.
Clarissa, or hey, Evan.
Can you hear me still?
Yes, we can. We're not stopping you because you're going on. We want to hear your story, but you're breaking up a bit.
I just am, it's just putting me in a place where I really want, I'm clogging.
Yeah, Amy, we might have to.
Did I stop?
Yeah. Hold on.
It froze.
Where do you think it's coming from? Because Evan, you're actually kind of frozen on my end.
It's freezing.
Clarissa,
but, well, I guess, can you hear me okay? No.
Hold on.
It might be my Wi-Fi.
Although, Evan, is it your Wi-Fi? Can you guys hear me?
It could be my Wi-Fi. It goes in and out. Mm-hmm.
Amy, am I freezing on you?
You were, but I see you right now.
You guys are fine.
Okay.
I see everybody.
You are frozen to me right now, Evan.
Clarissa, if you turn off your video, that might help.
Okay. I'll do that. Where's video?
Dang technology.
Stop video. Right? FaceTime.
Okay.
Is it off?
It
Can
is.
you hear me now?
This might work.
Yeah, I can
Oh,
actually.
and so I have a goofy picture up there now too. But you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Um, so anyway, that's just sort of hit me, is, trying to see all sides of it, but then focusing on it's that whole, where people are saying all lives matter, and I love the example of if you go to a breast cancer event, you're not going to say, well, what about colon cancer?
Yeah.
This is what we're
Yeah,
focusing on
definitely.
right now. And it's so clear to me, and it's frustrating when people can't just stop and listen. So I also realize though how much I also need to stop and listen. And it's been, I just reconnected with my friend from, second, third, fourth grade. She was my best friend, and we literally got torn apart in the early 70s because of racism. It was just too hard for her, really, because I knew I could walk away. But we're reconnecting, and it's so powerful. And I feel so sad that we've missed so many years, but we both feel really happy to have each other back. And especially now, this is just, we have to talk about, the big pink elephant in the room,
Gosh, Clarissa, I like what you just said. You said, you like when racism became an issue with you guys, you could walk away. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really profound because, yeah.
And I don't mean it like I could walk away because I wanted to. I didn't want to at all, but it was easier for me to deal with it than it was for her. And I totally understood that. Like I
Well,
knew that I had to let her go. I
it
got
also
it.
makes me think like just as somebody who's white, we can step out of the conversation very easily.
Yes.
Whereas somebody who's
That,
black,
yeah,
they may be living it every day. They can't just
exactly.
step away from the conversation. So, anyways, that I thought that was really profound what you just shared.
Thank you. That's enough
So,
of me. Thank you so much.
thank you, and thank you
Yeah,
so much
thank
for
you.
being willing to just share share what you had to say, and also everything you just said about listening. It's so important, and I think I almost think the people who, like you said, like you thought you knew, and you were like, you have friends who are black, and so you're like, I'm not racist, so you think
Yes.
maybe those are the most, I don't want to say dangerous people, but it's like you think so you don't educate yourself more, right? But by educating ourselves more, you realize, whoa, I really didn't know just how much this goes on or where it stemmed from, to really, really grasp it and understand it. So I know for me that just, and like you said, just listening is so key, like being willing to like put our walls down, put everything we think we know down. It's very easy to get defensive and to defend what we know, but we only know what we know, so we need to be willing to really just open up and learn. And anyway, so I'm just grateful that you've been able to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Amy, let me ask you for your experience here. So through the past 2 weeks, I'm sure you've had some conversations or intend to have some conversations maybe with people who haven't participated in this workshop. How do you plan on bridging or having those conversations with people in a different way than you maybe would have before the workshop? Or what is your strategy to have those kind of challenging conversations?
Are you asking me or Clarissa?
You, Amy.
Me?
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, I think this is good because it's all about taking action, right? That's what today was all about too. Like, okay, so how do we now put this into play where you are helping to be a part of the solution versus the problem? So, and to be honest, I mean, I have to just go off of a little bit of experience with, I shared a lot of this last week actually, with, how well people respond to just stories and emotional stories and storytelling, and it makes it more personal, not political. It makes it more human. And so I know, just with my social platform, just sharing more stories on these topics of equality or racism or equal justice, I'm actually launching a podcast next month, and I was thinking a great guest would be, the podcast is all based on resiliency. So I was thinking a great guest would be somebody who was wrongly convicted, and their journey of how they handled that, years on death row or years in prison, and how did they bounce back from that. And so being able to share more stories is something that I'm really passionate about. So whether I do that on my podcast, or whether, I do that like I have been a little bit through social media, I've had a lot of people respond saying, oh my gosh, whoa, like just, some of the, let me think, there was a really great piece last week that we all watched with Brian Stevenson, and all about the justice system, and some of the wrongly convicted. And so I just kind of shared that and got a huge response from people. They're like, whoa, I had no idea. So I feel like I'm now passionate about, we all should be equal. And if that's the case, then let's make sure we all realize we're not, so that we can fix that. And
Yes.
so how can we share more of those stories that are just teaching people something without coming out too strong as, if you come out too strong sometimes as this like advocate and, trying to tell people right from wrong, I mean, you instantly put walls up. And so for me, I've just learned, I mean, my whole business is really based on storytelling. So really that's kind of more of my game plan.
I think it's really, really powerful. These are really challenging conversations. All of us have probably experienced it in one capacity or another. And I think either using the platform that you have, or sharing stories that are coming from other people or come from a seemingly neutral perspective is probably a useful tool in educating other people in a way that isn't too preachy, if you will. Clarissa, is there anything you'd like to share in terms of how you would approach things differently?
I think that I would talk about it more. I know for sure with all of my friends, and being in the music business, I think it's sort of like we all tend to inherently gravitate to who we've got something in common with. But we never said, hey, I'm white, you're black. Like, we just didn't talk about it. And I think that it's something that we can. And I know for me, I never kind of wanted to bring it. It's an obvious thing, obviously, but I felt like I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to put anything between us. But then I think, like, why would that's ridiculous. It wouldn't put something between us. And but that's that sort of, like you guys have been talking about, and everybody said this.
We might have to mute Clarissa, Evan.
Yep.
The systemic way that we've been brought up. It's just sort of the way this world has been. I got muted.
Sorry, guy.
That is so okay.
I don't know if you can see me right now or hear me right now, but we had to mute you just because your phone or your computer's cutting out a little bit. Okay. Evan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So Clarissa, I'm sorry to cut you off. You were saying amazing things, and we really—
No, that's okay. If you want to put my video back on and—
Yes.
And mute me, that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks you guys so much. I wanted to mention to anybody else too, right now, if you have anything you want to share, you want to come live with us, go ahead and mention it in the chat box, and then we can bring you on. I think we, Evan, we have one more person. We've got a guy who's a part of,
real quick, before Ronald just said, oh, Ronald and Katie, so we should put them on the list. Why don't we start with Ronald? Let's see.
Yeah, and and I'm like surprised there's a guy here, but I'm not surprised. I just saw so many women on the list, and then I think it was Ronald who reached out to me, and I was like, okay. I got a guy in the mix. So
Hey, Ronald.
Hi, actually, my name's John. Somehow,
Okay.
somehow Zoom logged me in under my dad's name, so I don't
John,
know.
gotcha. Okay. Got it.
Name's John. Yeah. So, I mean, this workshop has really been really kind of eye-opening for me. I mean, I've always kind of like enjoyed these kinds of things and sort of dabbled in things like this on and off in the past, but just doing this workshop really, I think, kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things that maybe I wasn't aware of, or maybe was aware of, but just really didn't want to believe or accept. I mean, I'm Jewish, so maybe in a way I feel like I sort of have a bit of a stake in this as well. I've seen plenty of hate against people like me. Especially in the last couple of years we've had like temple shootings and all kinds of vandalism against Jewish monuments and such. And I've always kind of like understood that, but it's like maybe I just from this workshop kind of realized sort of like seen the light of how much of things like this is more of a rampant problem than maybe people thought or wanted to give credit for. I mean, you hear, I see, and some of my friends or coworkers have told me, oh, this is 2020. I mean, this stuff, is a thing of the past. This isn't the 60s anymore. We've come so far. Maybe we have, but there's just so much more to fix. And judging from what I've been seeing these days, systemic racism, is I'm not sure if I really want to say as strong as it ever was before, but it's certainly prevalent. I mean, I think a lot of people want to think that, things like this, have, don't exist, and, you're not going to encounter this as much as you might have, 50 years ago, and maybe it's things like this never really disappeared, maybe it, for whatever reason, it just, it went into remission, it was in the shadows. And, I won't really get into details about specifics, people or otherwise, but, in the last recent years, I think, people who are racist, are become less afraid to rear their ugly heads. They don't feel that, if they do this, they're going to get punished for it, and they feel safer of being openly racist or openly violent because they just feel that they're not going to suffer any consequences before it. And unfortunately, in quite a few instances I see, that's the case. For people who have done this are doing it because they feel that there's not going to be any repercussions. I mean, that's why a lot of people do things, because if they feel that they can't lose anything by doing it, why not do it? But it's just learning about this, and it's just taking part of this is kind of make realize that maybe I'm just going to try to be a little more understanding and accepting of this, accepting that this is a problem. And despite being 2020, when you would think that a lot of this stuff would not be happening in this day and age, you would hope it wouldn't be happening by this time. You think people would have wised up in the last 40 or 50 years, and even be raised better by people. But things like this are just are still strong, and maybe it's never going to go away. Maybe it'll be fewer and farther between as time goes on, and maybe it's even less than it was before. But I think people really need to come to grips and understand and accept that this is systemic racism is never going to die. There's always going to be people like that, and as long as there are people like that, it will still be alive. It only takes one with a heartbeat to for it to stay alive. As long as there's one, it will continue to live. And I don't know, as much as I'd like to think we'll come to a point when we won't ever have to deal with something like that ever again. I don't know if that's ever going to, if that's feasible, if that's possible. I mean, do you think that say 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now, do you think that eliminating systemic racism or hate against you know, whatever it would be, race, religion, things like that. You think that it's possible that, you know, however long it takes, you think it's possible to completely extinguish that? Because I'm not so sure that it's, you know, it's possible.
You said a couple really great things that I'll get back to. I wrote some notes as you were talking, but I think one thing, my mom who's on here, we were just talking about this, that I think, so my niece and nephew, they're about 15, 16 years old, 14 and 16 years old. And I feel like their generation, they're so knowledgeable. I think they're going to be the most powerful generation we have, because they are living through all this with us, and they've got every bit of knowledge at their fingertips. And, you know, other than like the millennials, you know, we always make fun of the millennials because they didn't really have to go through anything, and they just, you know, had their phones and iPads in their hands playing video games. But I think my niece and nephew's generation, they are going through this right now, right? They are going through all, you know, everything that we're all faced with today. And so they're seeing the hardships, they're living some of the hardships. They were out of school, they couldn't graduate, stuff like that, or they couldn't have their normal, you know, graduation in life they thought they were going to have at this time. But they also just are so knowledgeable. Like my nephew, who's 16, he's so knowledgeable, it's unreal. And I think it's because social media too, it gives them all sides. One thing I mentioned to my mom the other day too was like, gosh, when I was in high school, we didn't have social media. I got my information from the news, and that's it. And I also didn't know the news was biased, right? Like, where do you get your information? What channel are you watching, and who's supporting, you know, what parties are those supporting? And so you know, I had one perspective because that's all I knew. And I was raised in a family that voted a certain way and stuff. And so it wasn't until I was in my 20s on my own that I realized, oh, there's a whole kind of other side to things, and started to figure out where I stood. Whereas I feel like the younger generation, they are making their mind up every day right now on where they stand, because they're getting fed all this political stuff, COVID stuff, the protests, you know. And so personally, I think that it's going to get better. But I think it takes people like all of us who can share our perspectives with others. And like I mentioned last week, like, you know, you don't have to have a huge influence to change the world. Like, if you can even just change one person's mind. I was going to mention just even quickly, like, because my mom's doing this, and she's been telling me every day, like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this has seriously changed my perspective on certain things that I just didn't understand before. And just knowing that it's affected her is you know, is a great start. If you can kind of change one person or change the view of one person, then you know, that can lead to that person changing the view of somebody else. So Evan, I'm seeing you shake your head, but
yeah, I mean, I could just go on, and I love everything that you just said. I think that, you know, although to some degree we're striving for perfection, this kind of ideal, I think a lot of very meaningful change can happen in the progress that's made on the way there. And every one person or every 1% that we can continue to make improvements and make progress, I think that could mean one, you know, innocent person not being, you know, imprisoned for decades of their life, and a family losing their father and husband. I think these have ripple effects throughout society. So I think that's super, super important. So although I think we should continue striving for more and not settle and be content, we should at the same time, you know, acknowledge and recognize the improvements that we're making, and the impact that all of you are making for participating in something like this. So
yeah, I was going to mention quickly before we say bye to John, but just to kind of wrap up a few things that he said. You know, he mentioned something about it because he's Jewish, that he kind of said at the beginning, like, so yeah, I mean, you know, you just kind of live with it a little bit, like bits and pieces of racism or people saying things. I mean, you know, that's part of the problem too. I mean, on all sides, right? Is that, so maybe if you're on the side where you face more racism, you unfortunately learn to live with it, which is not fair, and you shouldn't have to, right? And then on our side, people literally, I can say, like, as somebody who's white and who lives in a, ski resort town, and I travel the world, and in the sport that costs a stupid amount of money that most people can't do. Like, I don't see what other people experience. And so you kind of live in your world and don't realize what's going on. So anyways, I think one thing you mentioned too, John, is you said it nicely, just that all of this has been kind of just sitting in the shadows. And I totally agree. I think my mom and I were talking about, like, is it the media? Like, at the beginning of this, we're like, gosh, I mean, is it the media that's blowing this up? Is this really this big of a deal? Like, and it's like, yeah, it's just been sitting in the shadows. Now it's just coming to the surface, and we're realizing just how big of a deal it is. We almost lived in, like, what we thought maybe was a state of equilibrium, but we realized, no, not at all. We finally have cameras to film, deaths like George Floyd, or, some of these other instances that are happening. We're just realizing how big of a deal it really is. It's just been sitting in the shadows. And so, John, anyways, you said that really well, I think. So
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Okay, so we have Katie Robinson who would like to share. Okay, I will unmute you, Katie. Seems to take a while when I unmute someone.
Yeah, we get to watch your while you're doing it.
I might have to shut up a barking dog. We'll see how this works. I've got treats in my hand. Anyway, I had to laugh when Amy was talking at the last chat about the older generation, because I am part of that older generation. And there's a part of me that wanted to go, slap your face, girl. We're trying to learn here, But
happy to have you here.
I spent a couple hours today talking to my son. I live in Arizona. He's up in Seattle. And he was like, who are you? And what have you done with my mom? Because my whole attitude, I'm very conservative. He's really liberal. And I've been told in the past to check my privilege, right? By my son and my daughter-in-law. And I love them anyway, but I didn't get it. I mean, I was just like, kind of like, well, I'm not any more privileged. The whole thing that old white women do. And I grew up in the Northwest, all white. My parents were pretty open-minded. In fact, my dad, who was a florist, had a gay couple working for him like 60 years ago. And so I grew up, I was cool with that. But I didn't get it. I didn't get any of this. And so after the George Floyd thing, I started doing a little research myself, just because I knew I was ignorant, okay? And then I stumbled on this, and also another workshop called by Nona Jones, Faith and Prejudice Movement. So I've been going through 2 workshops at the same time, and I lose track of what I read for whom, right? Anyway, so then I read Just Mercy. I saw the movie. We got the little clips from True Justice that were so fascinating that I watched the documentary. And I was just gutted by that. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I had to watch 13th. And so now I'm just on the floor. I mean, I don't know how I could get to be 70 and not know anything. I experienced sexism and misogyny. I'm a professional. I'm a retired professional, and I experienced a lot of that. So I sort of said, well, I know what it feels to a little bit to be oppressed. I don't know at all. I knew nothing. So it's very generational. I do see that. I see it with my son and daughter-in-law who are in their 30s. They have a lot to learn as well. They're not as smart as they think they are, but they know more than I do. They've sort of led me into some things that I wasn't thinking about. But even they are, they watched Just Mercy and were pretty blown away as well. So they weren't totally knowledgeable either. But I do see generational change for sure, which gives me some hope for the future. It gives me some profound fear in some other areas, but a lot of hope for this racial justice issue, especially. But I also see even older people older than I'm in a retirement community, so I'm with people that are a lot older. There's so much resistance to hearing anything that I guess I pat myself on the back a little bit, that I'm willing to be open-minded at my age, but there's so little of that in older people. So I definitely see that a lot of them they're not going to change. They're going to live their lives, and we're on this little safe white retirement community, and we don't have to care about this stuff, right? When you come around to it, because we just live our lives and nobody interferes and it's all good. So that sort of makes me sad, but it just is the way it is. But I do see the generations behind us embracing change, not being afraid of change, which is human nature. At my age, you're afraid of change. You just are. I'm not, but most people are. So just deal with it and let us die off, and that'll get rid of us. And then the next year, I mean, I'm being sort of facetious, but sort of serious too, because let's face it, we all vote, and we're still all around, and we're still the baby boomers. We're still a big chunk of the population that influences things, in positive ways, of course, too. But in this aspect, there's just a ton of resistance to change, but I don't see that resistance in younger people. And so it's been kind of fun talking to my son. We spent 2 hours and agreed with each other. I was like, okay, that hasn't happened in a long time. Because he's seeing me being open-minded about some things that we haven't really talked about racism before, but his wife's a lawyer, and she worked on the Innocence Project for a while, when she was in law school, and they're trying to explain it to me, and I'm like, well, whatever. And now we're on the same point. We can talk to each other because I have a base of knowledge now. So this has been wonderful. It's exhausting. 2 weeks of 2 workshops. I'm just like, I just want to go bake some bread or something.
You should.
But it's been amazing. And I've just got a whole bunch of things teed up still to read. Now I'm insatiable. I need to know more. And I don't agree. I listened to Dr. Joseph, who's just delightful. In addition to being just adorable. There's a few things he said that I'm like, no, I agree with the problem. I don't know if I agree with the solution. I'm basically a conservative Republican. What can I say? But generally speaking, everything he said, and listening to Brian Stevenson, I heard him on the other workshop as well. I'm just blown away by the wisdom and well, you two, Evan, are so approachable. Nothing that was said or shared with us this last 2 weeks made me go, no, wait a minute. No, got my hackles up. Nothing. Everything was so presented in such a way that we could just listen and absorb and agree or disagree. But I never felt defensive. I never felt like I had to defend my previous beliefs or positions. So that's, again, in both of these workshops. So that's been just wonderful. So I think this has been I just jumped into this. So this sounds like an interesting idea. I'm so glad I did. This has been so good.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, Katie. Certainly our goal and our approach is always about trying to introduce new perspectives and not, enforce any kind of perspectives on the people participating. Katie, let me ask you this. Is there, in hindsight now, is there anything that you think your son could have done or communicated to you to have had a more productive conversation before you had ever participated in this workshop? I'm trying to learn how we could have bridged those conversations.
Yeah, probably not. But we haven't had a lot of conversations about racial justice. It's more been just politics in general, and we're just as divided as many families are. But lovingly divided. But we haven't talked a lot about racial justice. It's come up a couple of times. My daughter-in-law kind of opened my eyes recently in talking about being the voice for those who don't have one. And at first I didn't understand what she meant, but I'm a volunteer interpreter for the deaf, and I see oppression in the deaf community. So I was able to relate that in the deaf community and the Black deaf community especially. So I was able to relate to that. I'm like, okay, I'm sort of literally a voice, but also figuratively kind of a voice for some deaf people. So I kind of got what she was talking about, and that kind of opened my eyes. That kind of opened the door for me to say, oh, wait, okay, oppression, what can I do? Because I was like, well, what can I do anyway? Being the voice for someone else as an ally, not as a, oh, poor you, I'll be the voice for you. No, not like that, but as an ally. So I'm learning more about allyship. So she sort of opened some doors for me. We don't live in the same town, so we don't have an opportunity for a lot of conversations. My son and I do these marathon texts sometimes, but we haven't spent a lot of time talking about racial justice. Again, mostly just politics.
I think that's really good advice for all of us. It's what your son was able to do is make things maybe a little more relatable to you,
Mhm.
and then it made sense. And so I know, I mean, as a motivational speaker, when I'm standing on stage talking to people, it's like, I lost my legs and had a kidney transplant. Like, how do I relate this to what
Yeah.
a challenge somebody else is facing? And so I think maybe, you know, finding those, finding,
There's a common ground.
going back into generational too. I mean, my mom and I will talk that we're very lucky to have great aunts, you know, still alive. My grandparents who are great grandparents still alive, you know, they're in their 80s. And so we definitely, you know, we have this conversation of like, well, they're never going to change their mind. It's worth the energy trying to get somebody at literally like 88 years old to change their mind. You know, we tend to not, we just don't go into arguments, you know, you just
It's
kind of
not
go,
worth
this is the perspective, this is ours, we meet in the middle, you know. And so anyways, all of everything that you just shared, like, I'm so grateful you came on here to talk to us, because you just represent, you know, a huge part of our population and families. And I'm grateful that you're also so open. I actually had a question for you. You mentioned that you knew you were ignorant. So my question is, then what was it that allowed you to put your walls down or your defenses down to want to learn? Like some people don't want to learn. They want to sit, they want to know what they know, and they don't want to know anything else. So don't try to tell them. But you decided to take that step and dive into 2 different, you know, racial justice workshops. And so what made you want to make that decision?
George Floyd. I was gutted when I saw that. I saw that on TV. I mean, I was gutted. I didn't know what to do with it, you know. And then things popped up again. I started following you. Actually, I started following your buddy, the surfer girl.
Oh, Bethany Hamilton.
Yeah, Bethany. I started following her, which led me to following you on Instagram. I'm, in spite of being old, I'm very into social media. And I think your workshop popped up. Well, your other book, your original one, and then no, we're going to change it. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I better look at this. And then the Faith and Prejudice one, I'm also a Christian, and you know, what's the church doing about this? And so then this Faith and Prejudice thing came up and had some great speakers on it. Brian Stevenson was on it, Purdy Evans, some really good speakers. And then last night I happened upon a video. Burt Weinstein has the Black Intellectual Roundtable. I've only heard 20 minutes of it, and some of it was sort of over my head. These are like all PhDs. But boy, it looks like it's going to be wonderful. So it was George Floyd, though. That's what started it. I don't think anything else would have triggered it for me like that. Just talking to somebody wouldn't have. But I saw that, and I'm like,
yeah. What do we do with this? I totally agree. I mean, that's what prompted us to like put our original book club on hold. We've got to address this, and that motivated us hugely as well. We got to do something with this. We don't know where to go with this now. Knowing we know now, where do we go and what do we do? So,
yeah, that was it for me.
Evan, sorry, I look at your face and see us almost talk over each other, but were you going to say something? Oh wait, we can't hear you, Evan. Are you there?
Need to unmute myself first. No, I was just thanking Katie for sharing.
Yeah. Really, thank you, Katie. Seriously, thank you so much. I mean, I think just your perspective matches a lot of people's perspectives. I mean, I'm, you know, literally like talking to you sounds like maybe talking to my mom or talking, you know, to other parts of my, you know, people in my family. And so it's just really, it's refreshing to also just see that you've got these, you know, a well-rounded perspective. And so I appreciate that, you sharing.
Thank you, Katie. So we got a lot of other people still. Litsa, where is she?
By the way, Mom, I hope you don't mind I'm talking about you on here. I know you're gonna want to come live, but then I'm like, well, if you don't come live, then I'm gonna be kind of involving you anyways.
There's Alita. Elisa, can we hear you? Oh, no. Looks like you're unmuted. Let's go to Elisa. I'll come back to you and I will work on your audio. Let's go to Alice B.
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Alice.
Hi. I don't know. I see like there's a lot of women, but then I'm the only woman of color on here. So, and well, beside Evan, he's a male, but no offense to Evan, just saying. Yeah, it's very eye-opening, and it's very like everything Dr. Joseph said the past 2 weeks, I can relate a lot, like a lot of what he said. I can relate, because even in my own life, beside being a mom, even when I was single, I was experiencing that at work, at school, with the professionals that I had that's supposed to support me, but then they did something else, right? Like I'm talking about like doctors, nurses, yeah, like the emergencies, in case I get sick, right? So I'll bring some stuff up. I'm like, well, my body feels this. I feel it's not right. But then they're like, nothing is wrong with you. So I'm like, is that race, or is that them not listening to me, or they just like cut me off and just like, I don't know, or putting the walls up, right? So it's, yeah. And then even when I became a mom, it was even harder. The first, I don't know, 6 years with my oldest, I'm like, I saw a lot of racism in my country, back home, even in here in Canada, and in my province too. But I'm like, well, that's what people are. I can't change people, right? At first I was angry, and then I was talking to my mom back then, and then she was like, well, Alice, if that's what they are, just don't respond, right? So we have this saying in French, is like, when you it's not a good word, it's just when someone doesn't talk to you, just be quiet, right? Just give them space, right? Don't push them to talk to you when they don't feel like it, right? So, and then I'm like, well, mom, you don't understand. She was like, well, Alice, you cannot change people. If that's who they are, that's who they are.
Hmm.
So I had like an argument and a misunderstanding with my mom, and we had a big fight about that. And then I apologize, because I did not know, right? Because maybe she knows things that I don't know. And even her, when I was young, I saw a lot of racism with her. Like I experienced a lot of racism with her, even as her daughter, and with her family and her work and her church. I'm like, okay, especially her family. I'm like, why do they do that?
So
And then
I have a quick question for you. So when you say you have experienced, you've seen racism, you just mentioned when you were younger, and you've seen it with your church, or you've seen it with your mom, or do you have an example of that?
yeah, so for example, with the government on the province where I am in Alberta, in Edmonton, the city of Edmonton, I was going through some rough stuff in my marriage, and then I was asking for some help, some support, and mental health help. And everywhere I turned, I'm like, nobody's taking me seriously. So I had this medical doctor, a physician. I go see him. I'm supposed to have 1 hour, and I go there for 10 minutes. I'm like, this is not normal. I'm like, since I've been in Canada, I usually see my physicians for 1 hour. Mm-hmm. Why him 10 minutes? So weird. I did not understand until I had to reflect, and it made me angry. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is my health. So I had to do something. At first did not want to like cause trouble, because they'll be like, well, Alice, you have free healthcare, you should not complain, and you seen a doctor and you've been whining, you've been a baby and all that, right? So, and then I'm like, no, I think it's my right later. So, and then I talked to my sister, was like, no, Alice, you have to stand up, you have to find a different doctor. And I'm like, because I'm a kind of person, I don't like to confront things. I don't like to confront people. If people confront me, fine. But I cannot do that back, because that's not who I am, right? Same as my mom, of that mentality, right? So I'm like, people, you cannot change people. And then, right, until I had to speak up with that doctor, I'm like, I can't. Even my new physician, the female, in all the years I've been in Canada, I have first time white female doctor. I usually don't. It's usually the white male. And then I'm like, oh my God, I get scared, right?
Wow.
And then this doctor, I'm like, she understood me. She even like got pissed off, was like, Alice, I don't understand. 10 minutes? When you want to speak for 60 minutes? I'm like, I don't understand. She was shocked. She thought maybe I was lying. I'm like, I'm not lying. Like, I can count how many times I went into his office. I had 10 minutes conversation with him, and I'm like, are you taking, I go home, I sleep on it. I'm like, okay, this is driving me crazy. I had to do something about it, until I did. And yeah.
I think I've been writing some things down that you're sharing. And, you know, I think one thing that's so interesting, like what you just said at the beginning about, you know, your physician who, you know, who would only see you for a few minutes, is it race? Like each time these things happen, you have to question, is this a racial thing? Like, what is this? And I think that right there, oh, it makes me want to cry actually, but that right there, like, shows me my white privilege, because I have never had to say, is it the color of my skin? Is that why my doctor's not listening to me? You know, I mean, that's just an added layer and oppressor, is that the word I'm looking for? Just, and stress, that something that I know I've never had to deal with. And in fact, I have such wonderful, and I've thought about this, and this is just maybe kind of hearsay, but I've thought about this, that I have such wonderful relationships with my doctors. My doctors have gotten me to where I'm at today. I mean, they become my best friends. We text, we like hang out. That's how extensive of relationships I have with my doctors. And I've wondered, like, you know, would someone of color have that experience too? I mean, I think that, and who's to say? But what I can say is, I've certainly never had to say, is it the color of my skin? Is it the color of my, you know, you said your daughter. So if I had a kid, would I say, is it the color of my daughter's skin? Is that why she was left on the side of the road? So anyways, I think, you know, that right there just really hit me. And I just thank you so much for sharing your journey and your story. I think in this room, it's incredibly important to hear these, you know, real life experiences through everything that we've been learning this week. So anyways, I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Alice. Thank you for, it looks like we're wrapping up here. It's 8 o'clock, at least Central. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy evenings tonight to share it with us, and spend another time investing in learning about other people's experiences and perspectives. I continue to say, I know it's been, you know, some challenging content to kind of sit through and learn about in conversations, but I hope that you're all grateful that you did and feel like you got a lot of value from it. We certainly did, and everything I've heard tonight is a testament to every reason why we do what we do at High Tide. And thank you, Amy, for your partnership in making this possible and happen. So we couldn't be more grateful.
think, Evan, thank you so much. And I just wanted to mention too, you know, if anybody, a few people have asked if they could donate more to the Equal Justice Initiative. And absolutely, at this point, we would say, you know, you can go to their website if you feel like donating more, just, you know, if you're moved to donate more from all this, but also we'll have a follow-up email with a link that you can also, you know, if you want to make
Absolutely.
a contribution there too. And just once again, just thank you guys so much. This has been just as much of a journey for me as it has been for you guys. I didn't know what to expect kind of stepping into this. I didn't even know if it was my place to do something like this. And yet at the same time, I came in as a student, and, you know, and I'm just grateful that you guys took the opportunity to do this with me. So I feel like I'm proud of all of us for stepping up and doing this and educating ourselves. And, you know, now we can help to change the world in our own ways. And so thank you guys so much.
Love it. Thank you.